Hello, hello, hello. We are live, and I am just going to pop into the Facebook page to make sure that we're live, and then I'm gonna start the interview. Yay!
Brilliant.
Good morning, everyone, and how are we all this morning? So, I want to welcome you all. First of all, those that are joining us live, and for anyone that's listening to the recording, it's also going live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. So, welcome this morning to the chat with Lynsey Hanratty, who is a business coach and a mentor to female entrepreneurs. And I've met Lynsey throughout the years, both on offline and online networking events. And Lynsey also did my business clarity program last year, the beta version I ran of it. And Lynsey helps her clients with their vision, mission, and purpose through tailored strategy, laser focus, and mindset overall. Now, guys, before I introduce you to Lynsey, I just want to let you know that I'm going to be letting you know about an irresistible offer that I have coming up on a 4-week course starting on the 5th of October. So we'll talk about that later. But for now, welcome, Lynsey.
Hi, Dolores. Lovely to be here. Thanks so much for asking me to be on your very first StreamYard, which is very exciting. I love it.
And thank you. And fingers crossed, it's all going to go really well.
Fingers crossed. Yes, the old technology, while we've had to use it so much recently, there are times where it can, not play ball, but I think we're good so far.
Yes, we are, I think, indeedy. So, Lynsey, you are a big fan of Brene Browne, and when I was looking up your website to I suppose to choose a topic that we would chat about, I noticed that you did a blog recently by Brene Browne, and it was talking about being comfortable, being uncomfortable, and having the confidence to do that. Now, a little bit of a let you know that there's going to be a little curse word here. And it's because this is what Brene calls something that Lynsey is going to talk to us about. So I'm going to let Lynsey talk to you about what Brene Browne and how she helps people along having confidence to be uncomfortable. Take the stage, Lynsey.
Okay. So as Dolores just mentioned there, Brene Browne, it was her very first podcast, and she spoke about something called the FFTs, which translates to, and here's where the curse word comes in, fucking first times. So I won't say that again. I'll just refer to them as FFTs. But basically what she was talking about was, the vulnerability of doing something for the very first time. So I was listening to her podcast, and I thought to myself, I need to put this into a blog and get this out there, because it was her very first episode. And to Brene herself, and she has done lots of studies on vulnerability and shame. That's what she calls herself, a shame researcher. And she says that the very definition of vulnerability is uncertainty, emotional exposure, and risk. And these are all of the things that we bring to the table when we're being new at something. And it's a really awkward situation. None of us like the first time we have to do something. It feels hard. It feels awkward. It's, but it's the epitome of vulnerability, basically, because we're bringing all of those things into play, the risk, the uncertainty, and the emotional exposure, because, as I say, none of us want to be, new at something. But the reality is that if we are not being new at things, if we are not developing and growing and evolving as people, as human beings, then, we're not living, She mentions that famous line in the Shawshank Redemption: you either get busy living or you get busy dying. And I love that line. It's one Morgan Freeman mentions. So if you're not, being new, being constantly, or, every so often being new at something, you're going to get busy dying, because you need that, vulnerability. You need to use that to your advantage. It's what Brene calls the secret sauce, because we are supposed to be evolving and growing as human beings. And the only way we can do that is to be new at things, is to be vulnerable, is to learn, is to grow and evolve.
That's wonderful, Lynsey, and that's so true, isn't it? And I love the way she talks about, the initial excitement we get when we get this idea in our head, I'm going to launch this project, or it could be even something personal,
Yeah.
we're all gung-ho, we're going to do this. And then suddenly, like, it's like a moment, oh, the thoughts start coming in to us, who am I to
Yeah.
do this? Or whatever
Yeah.
the limiting thoughts we have. And the excitement
Absolutely.
suddenly then kind of gets dissolved a little bit, which is such a shame, isn't it? And that's what she talks
Yeah.
about, I think, as well.
Yeah, and I think that's true. Especially I think for women, we are plagued a lot with things like imposter syndrome, self-sabotage. The upper limiting beliefs of I'm not good enough. Who am I to say that I can do this? And that's historical. That's just as a relation to the fact that we've only had the vote for the last 100 years, things like that. So we are still establishing ourselves, in our own self, in terms of bringing ourselves outside of our own comfort zones, and feeling that inadequacy and vulnerability as we move into developing our own businesses, creating something from an idea, which is always a difficult thing, because a thought is one thing, but making it tangible is a completely different thing, and making it real. So we need to constantly be getting, being new and awkward at things, because then we're stretching ourselves outside that comfort zone, and we're developing as human beings, and leaving that imposter syndrome and the comfort zone behind us, and stretching into learning other things that will benefit us then for the long run.
And I love that. And I'm just looking here too. It's just a note I made as well, and you talked about women there and the way we can be. I think a lot, I know from myself, this has been my own journey. And I know from talking to my own coaching clients as well, that one particular issue that a lot of women suffer with is afraid to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm afraid to be heard. This invisibility cloak. And it's not every woman, and that's fine. I know we all have different beliefs, but do you find that yourself with women, that it's the visibility and this, or we inherit sometimes? I suppose it's the conditioning of our mind. A lot of, and it's not men's fault either all the time. It's like this conditioning. We're told that women should be one way and men should be the other way. But I think it might be changing now. How do you find it these days with your clients?
Yeah, I think visibility is a huge thing. I think naturally as women, we're people pleasers, we're the nurturers, we're the carers. So we do a lot behind the scenes. We're not necessarily the ones that put ourselves out there. And when you see women putting themselves out there versus men, a man will be assertive, but a woman will be bossy. And this is the kind of language that we use around, women in business a lot. She can't be just assertive, or she can't be just doing her thing. She's just a bit bossy, or she doesn't get on well with people, or she's too hard-nosed or whatever. And I think that also comes back to women always wanting to be the people pleasers all the time, and not put themselves out there. And when visibility comes up for women in business, they'll say things like, oh, well, I don't know if I should do that, and they seem to seek permission a lot. And I know from a lot of my clients when I'm dealing with them, seeking permission, I'm kind of like, who are you seeking permission from? There's nobody to seek permission from. But again, it's that sort of instilled programming for women, that I mean, how long ago, it wasn't even that long ago that there was a dowry for a woman to get married, so there was a payment for her being part of somebody else's family, So again, it's the permission, it's being permissive, and saying, do you know what? I don't need anybody's permission to do what I want to do in my business, or to be new at something, or to be awkward at something, or to share my gifts and talents with the world. But I do find with women in particular, when I bring up things like social media, when I say to them, what are you doing at the moment, to show yourself out to the world? And they will be like, oh, well, I'm not doing a lot of social media. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to portray myself. I don't know what to be telling people. And I recently did this amazing course, and I'm going to give a big shout out to Sally Murphy from Murphy Communications. She did it. I was a beta tester on her course as well. I seem to do a lot of beta testing for yourself.
Okay.
It's
part of growing.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about, her beta test was all around storytelling and how we tell our stories. And I think that the main way that women will get confident at telling their stories is to connect with their own story and to be okay with their own story, instead of berating ourselves for maybe not, having the be all and end all, the perfect career, the perfect life, the perfect children, the perfect husband, just to say, this is me. I come with this baggage, and that's okay. I don't have to be perfect, but my story is still worth telling, and my story will connect with other people. And particularly if you're dealing, with other women, we all love a good story. And a good story can be hard to tell when it's your own story, because you don't know, what parameters you should use. And, we're not looking at the nitty gritty of anybody's story, a hard childhood or anything like that. And I've had clients who've said that to me, I don't want to talk about my childhood because it was uncomfortable. And I'm like, nobody's asking you to do that. But what we need to do is find that connection that you have with your clients. And the way to do that is through visibility and story. And that's what Sally was all about. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah.
And I love that, because storytelling is something that I'm huge about as well. I'm an author as well. I love storytelling, and I love getting into story. And I notice as well, and you brought that point up, that like we don't always have to go back into the nitty gritty.
Yeah.
But what we want to do is find the patterns that are keeping us there. Because like, I suppose you find the same thing. It's generally the same kind of issues that a lot of business people, whether they're men or women, suffer from. But I guess we're talking about female entrepreneurs here this morning in a way. So like feelings around belonging versus fitting in, being seen, being heard. They're patterns. We all have a different story that we share with our own backstory may be different, but really at the end of the day, it's about the self-esteem. It's about it's the patterns we have around these topics. So we don't have to share. And I always one teacher said to me, or shared with us in a course I did a few years ago, you never have to share your story with anyone. You only share your story with someone who deserves to hear it.
Absolutely. And I think that's absolutely true. And especially if you're trying to make connection with people, to help them to make their world better, to make their lives better. And especially people like yourself and myself, when we're dealing with people in transformation, we're helping people to get from one place to another place.
Yes.
There is growth in that. There is a newness and an awkwardness around that. And, people don't often not necessarily to hear what you have to say, but, if you challenge them slightly on something, they're kind of like, it kind of, it goes against the grain a little bit for them. But at the same time, telling the story, and even telling the story of feeling awkward and new about something will connect with other people, because we've all been new at something at some stage. We've all, as female entrepreneurs, it's a totally, unique journey for each individual. So, but there are always common threads, that feeling of trying something and not, getting it or understanding it, or, just not connecting with it. But again, us kind of, journaling that and telling the story of that will allow other people who are thinking about becoming entrepreneurs to say, well, look, this lady or this girl, she couldn't get it together. She did get it together, and it's a success story. And maybe I can do that too. And we can be role models for other women who want to do what we're doing.
Love it. So let's go back to Brene Browne, because I took you off track. And this wonderful FFT methods that she speaks about. Can you share that with us? Because I think it's wonderful, the steps that she takes us through as well, about how to be comfortable with the uncomfortable when we're a rookie and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically what she says is just, that she has this sort of 4-step strategy to get used to how to get over the FFT, to get over being the newbie at something. And it's really useful. And I suppose I can relate this to the fact that we are all going through a global pandemic for the first time. We are all going through this process together as a collective. So, when you're going through something like that, you can name it, you name it as, because sometimes we're afraid to name an experience because we feel it's giving that thing a power. But actually, because we have to attach meaning and language to everything, to approach a situation, to handle a situation. So, when you name your FFT, whatever it might be, saying, okay, I'm being new at something. I'm being new in a pandemic. I don't know what's going on. Or I'm being new in business and I don't know what I need to do next. Or, I don't know how to use this particular social media or whatever. So, but by naming it, you're taking its power away from you, because if you have everything inside your head all the time, you're not bringing it out there, you're not verbalizing, you're not leaving it out there in the open. And, if you manage to give it, if you manage to, renege the power that it has on you, it doesn't naming it means it's not such a tough experience.
And it's so true, isn't it? Like I listened to that blog, I listened to that podcast episode, and it's like that unattainable thing at times too. It's like we kind of shy away sometimes. We know the fear is looming in, if we start something new, but we kind of go, we try to kind of hide and shun away from it, but that's not the way to do it.
No, it isn't. And she talks about Martin Luther King in this podcast as well. And a great quote from him: power is the ability to effect change and achieve purpose. So when we take back our power, it means then, we're saying, okay, this is new to me. So why do I feel out of control? What's really going on here? What's either the resistance around this thing, or, why am I feeling like this? Am I feeling shame or vulnerability around this? Am I into a shame spiral? Or, why am I so confused? And even Brene herself, said in the podcast that, they decked out this whole gorgeous podcast studio. Everything was going well. And then the next thing, a week before like official lockdown, she was told, we're not actually going to be able to do the podcast the way you want to. So she ended up like in a small locker in her house, in a room, this tiny cupboard full of her son's smelly clothes, trying to do a podcast because she couldn't use the fancy studio.
I've been there.
So, this is the reality. And she was explaining this as a newbie. And then she was just like, okay, this is just my FFT. I don't know what's going on here, but I can take the power back and admit to myself that this is what it is. And I'm naming it. I'm saying, right, this is my first time doing this. I want it to be a success, but if I have to do it in a small cupboard surrounded by my son's smelly clothes, so be it, and that way then into her second point, you're normalizing the situation by naming it, you normalize it. So it means then that, and again, coming back to COVID, we have to normalize the situation now because it is the new normal. Sort of say, okay, this is a new thing for me. It's a new thing for everybody else. And I have to normalize this, because then by normalizing it, I'm taking the fear away from it. I'm taking that aspect of the newness of it away, and I'm making it something that is something I have to deal with in my everyday life. So, normalizing it then means you can then, into her third step, bring it into perspective and say, okay, I'm new at this. This is normal. And this is how I'm going to put it into a perspective. I'm going to say, okay, this feeling won't be permanent. This isn't going to last forever. Being new and awkward at something isn't going to last forever. The more I practice it, the better I'll get. The more I do the social media, the better I'll get at it. Or the more I feel into this pandemic and know what I need to do and have the common sense to wear my mask and clean my hands and whatever it needs to be, the better for me, and this habit or experience or thing that I'm learning to do will become normal someday, and I won't feel new at it anymore.
I love it. I'm just going to say there about one experience I had during COVID as well. 2020 started with a bang for me. Oh my goodness, I had my first international speaking gig in Phoenix in Arizona. I was so excited. I was nervous as hell as well, but it was like so exciting. And I ended up being a speaker on that online summit in my son's bedroom with him looking at me at 10 o'clock at night with the time difference. And I had bought this lovely pair of shiny shoes just to sort of, because I'm not really, I'm more into flat shoes, but I thought I'm going to treat myself to a nice pair of shoes, my first international gig. So, and I probably was dressed lovely from waist up where I was seen, and there I was sitting in my son's bedroom. So it's like that, but that really, it did bring me down a lot. But I had to, like that, name it and say, and realize the good out of it. I still spoke on the online summit, Highton Leah Woodford Hartsfeld Summit, but I didn't, just because it didn't turn out like I wanted it to. But so when you're talking about COVID and the experiences and embracing them,
Yes.
I took the power back from my own, I suppose, my own story around it.
Yeah.
By just embracing the fact that, you know what, it is what it is, and it made
Yeah.
it more real for me. And it happens us
Yeah.
all.
This is it. And her fourth point to that then, from naming it, normalizing it, putting it in perspective, she then does a reality check on your expectations. So, and I even refer to it myself in the blog. I said, I've learned guitar for I don't know how long, like years and years. But I spent 3 years, every week going to guitar lessons, and I still think I'm not very good at it. But again, that's my own problem, because I need to reality check my own expectations. You're going to be new at guitar for a very long time, because you don't turn into Mark Knopfler overnight, or Eric Clapton, So reality checking your expectations around learning something new, or doing something new, or
Yeah.
creating it for yourself. You have to give yourself time to let that bed in, because again, your neural pathways have to learn how to make this a habit. Your brain has to kind of get its head around, well, what is she doing, and why is this happening, and normalize it, and bring it then to say, okay, I'm going to reality check this, and say, I'm going to give myself a couple of months to get this right, instead of saying, I'll have it all done by tomorrow, everything will be great, I won't be new at anything anymore, because that's not how it works.
That's not how it works. No. And you know what? I took down another, I love listening, and I take down little sentences at times so that I can remember. And, perspective is based on our experience like that too. And, when our limiting beliefs are formed, when we're so young, they're coming from how we perceive our environment. And can you imagine? I often say to clients, and on Facebook Lives, if we formed a belief around something from the perspective we had when we were 6, imagine if we're still having that as our belief at 50, at 60, and we're still living our life from the perspective of no life experience, only for when we were 6, and not maybe emotionally fit enough to understand our environment. So, the reality checks, I think, are really coming in and owning the story, like you've mentioned there. It's critical to moving forward, isn't it?
Absolutely. And we bring so much shame sometimes to the decisions we make in our lives, and we really shouldn't set ourselves up for failure, or for shame, or for vulnerability. We should just accept that these are things that happen. We are supposed to be vulnerable at stuff, and not to mix that, to confuse that with feeling ashamed about not knowing something straight away, because everybody has a different learning curve, and learning something new is always going to take time, and have to be built out, and again, as I say, we're all in an FFT when it comes to COVID. We're still 6 months on, trying to get a handle on, well, what is actually going on here. It's the same when you start a new business. There are so many things to consider, there are so many things to cover, that it is easy for us to get overwhelmed with that too. But being able to say, okay, this is all new to me, and I have to give myself time to get a handle on it, and not be ashamed that I don't know everything in 2 minutes. It's not quite how it works. And again, that comes into the visibility side of it as well. Putting yourself out there, and not being, not feeling any sort of shame or vulnerability around saying, I'm here, I'm selling something, this is my product or service, and I'm good to go. Even if you are a newbie at it, you still have something to share, you still have something to give, and you're evolving and growing in your business as you do that.
Yeah, so true, Lynsey, and I mean, that's something even like myself as a coach. I mean, I have to remind myself at times. I went on my own little downward curve as well. I started off great in lockdown. I did an online coaching summit, and I was really going gung-ho, and then I just got exhausted with the lack of connection, with being a homeschooling parent. Let's not mention the war. And with
you did that.
no normality, for either the child I was trying to homeschool, or myself. I mean, it wasn't just me. He is a child as well. My youngest son loves connection, like myself, and I think that lack of connection brought the two of us down a bit. So I've had my own journey to come back out as well, and to regain my confidence, and so it's not. I don't think it's ever a journey that has an end as such, but we get the tools, we learn the tools in order to help us each step of the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And another quote I heard, I think it was from Sean Gallagher. He heard it from one of his mentors, and he said to him basically, nobody starts with a big business. We all have to start from the same, the concept, the idea, and build it up. And one of the things that Brene mentions as well in her podcast is that you have to remind yourself that when you're starting something new, it's going to be what she calls a heavier lift. So that's a mentally heavier lift, a physical heavier lift, and an emotional heavier lift. So, it's going to be harder than you think to get stuff up and running. And that is scary. But when you kind of come to the realization that, yes, it's going to be a little bit harder learning this. Yes, I'm going to be a lot more annoyed and frustrated with myself all of the time until I get this right. But if it's worth learning and learning well, that's not going to happen overnight anyway. So, giving ourselves, and I think a lot of this comes back to the whole, instant gratification of the world right now. Everybody needs everything done this minute. Everything should have happened yesterday. And we don't give ourselves the time to settle in and let something bed in with us. We expect to know everything straight away. And that's just not how the brain works, because we have to remember the brain has evolved over millions of years, and it has a certain way of doing things. And with that learning, we have to just realize that there will be a heavier lift involved emotionally, physically, and mentally on that.
And that's so true. And, it gets us away from, as she talks as well, about the excitement, the initial excitement that we feel about something, when that gets quashed. I mean, because really what propels us forward with our dreams and our goals is this fire we have, is the excitement that we feel. And it's such a shame when we do allow ourselves. And I do it, I have done it, and I'm sure I will again until I come back and take back my power over the situation and the story and reignite that excitement, because that's the good thing about it. I suppose people like yourself, myself, and many other coaches, that's what we do. We help people reignite their passion for what they want to do and to live a life on purpose then.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, there's some, I've done a lot of work on this myself recently, just, with COVID and everything else, kind of reigniting the purpose and the passion and the vision and the mission for the business. And I think there are a few pillars, foundational pillars that we have to, address when we are starting out. And sometimes it doesn't happen when we're starting out, because we're so excited to get the idea off the ground that we don't either check if it's viable or, is this something I'm going to do for a long time? And it doesn't necessarily have to be something you do for a long time, but the idea will evolve and it will grow. And we have to just accept that in a sense, because that's how our businesses work. I started out life coaching and career coaching, and then I moved into business coaching because I wanted to work with people who had an entrepreneurial spirit, because that's what I had, and I needed to work with people I could relate to on that level. So what I started out doing initially isn't what I'm doing now. And even, in my, I suppose you'd call it more traditional career, which was science, I'm not a scientist anymore, so we grow and evolve and learn as we adapt, and as we realize what our sense of purpose is and what the mission is that we have to bring our own gifts and talents to the world, but that can take time. But those pillars of, vision, mission, purpose, values, there's one more, I can't remember, I knew I had 5, but those main 4 pillars, are something that we need to have an understanding and a foundation on before we can move forward. But
for sure, Lynsey, because they're our motivators, aren't they? Our purpose is what motivates. And I was listening to Eckhart Tolle recently as well, and rather than I suppose with everything that I listened to as well during COVID to reignite my own passion, that I've kind of come away from talking about, finding our purpose, and which I used to talk about a lot, but instead talking about living your life on purpose, so that you can change, like you mentioned there. If we're constantly striving and making ourselves go towards a goal, but it's actually we're not in alignment with that anymore, then I think we miss out on opportunities where, like as we do, like I was in law for 20 years. Hello, completely different to what I'm doing now.
Meet your mate. Science and law.
Science and law. And we're two transformational coaches, but like it's like that. I am now doing what I'm passionate about. But if I had, the recession got me off track, which thank God was the catalyst for me to get me back into where I was. But I suppose it's that really, honing in on those pillars you talk about, because they're motivating our actions. our sense of purpose, our sense of belonging and fitting in and all that. Lynsey, is there anything that we haven't discussed that you'd like to tell people? I've really enjoyed our conversation today. Do you want to leave us with something?
Yeah, just coming back to that, the fifth pillar I worked out was your why, and I know we hear this bandied around a lot. And Simon Sinek says, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And I think that's really a really important point. And again, it ties back into visibility. It ties back into your confidence and power. It ties back into the values that you have yourself, and you're living, as you say, on purpose. So really, for people who are listening, just to focus in on, why are you doing what you do? Because that is what's going to motivate you on that miserable winter Wednesday that you don't want to get out of bed. That's what's going to motivate you if you have an emotional attachment to that why. Why are you doing what you're doing? Well, I want to spend more time with my family, or I want to take my kids to Disneyland, or whatever. Have an emotional reason for that why, because again, that's what's going to motivate you, because motivation can come and go. Willpower, you start off great at the beginning of the day with willpower, and by the end of the day, you're sitting eating pizza and watching Netflix, So, having that drive in terms of your initial, why, your mission, your message, and be visible, get out there and show people what you can do, even if it's just one Instagram post a week or one Facebook post a week, whatever you can handle at the moment, just to be visible, because again, there's so much has shifted online that this is the only way we can do business right now. It will change, obviously, once we have the vaccine and, things have calmed down a bit, but that could still take up to another 12 months. So really, it will. My partner's a scientist as well. We're keeping an eye on things, and I'm hoping that there's going to be an end to this. But in the meantime, if you tie in with the inner values and the inner work that you need to do while you're building your business, that will make the difference in the end.
I love it, Lynsey, because Tony Robbins is someone that I kind of tuned into during COVID as well, and I hadn't really followed him before that, but I love what he says, take your mess and make it your message, because I think that, and it's tapping into what we talked about earlier, as in, like, while we don't have to share our story with other people, I think that when we go deep in our why, when we go past the cognitive layers and into the emotional realm of why we do what we do, we are actually going to share our message from that place anyway. We don't have to tell people our story, our backstory, but when we go that deep, we're actually we are doing that. We're actually making a message out of the mess we may call. It's just a word for what he says, for what we've gone through and overcome ourselves.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Absolutely.
So, Lynsey, thanks very much for chatting with us here. It's been great. I've shared this as well with people that haven't been able to make it live. And just before people go, I'm going to just share my screen, Lynsey, so you can either pop off or share with us or stay with us, whatever you feel like doing. So basically, I just wanted to share my my package that I have 4. Can you see it there? I can't see that it's coming up. So I am starting a 4-week online Master Your Confidence course, which starts for 4 weeks on the 5th of October next. So it's 4 modules, and we build on it each week. So I'm going to take 18 people on a transformational journey, and it's building on these foundational steps that Lynsey spoke so eloquently about as well. And, it's starting from where we are. What's included in the course is you start off finding out week 1 on where you are now. And it's about creating a map of where you are, defining your value systems. I'm huge about defining our value systems, because sometimes we can find that we're actually not coming from our own value set, that we're coming from either societal values or a value system that we've actually inherited. This is a huge aha moment a lot of time for people when we do this particular part of it, and also defining the motivators that motivate our life. We build then on week 2, and we discuss the difference between belonging and fitting in, because when we try to fit in, we lose a part of ourselves. We say, we might realize, oh my goodness, if I want to get this, I need to change to be that. Whereas really, when we are living ourselves authentically, that's when we will have a better life, and we're not trying to change for other people. And we'll also look at our limiting beliefs, which are often disguised as our excuses. And of course, that inner saboteur that'll come up, that little voice inside our head. We'll go through that week too. And we'll also dive into our emotional fitness. And I'll be giving you tools each week to help you both define where you are, but also tools to help you change, which is what we want at the end of the day. We want transformation. Week 3, we talk about assertiveness. There's 3 ways we deal with our personal power. We're either passive aggressive, we might be a people pleaser, we might be aggressive because we come up in anger, this is just something that when something gets triggered, or we can be assertive. We also look at our wants and versus our desires, because when we come from a place of want, it's want. It's a very different energy when we come to something from a place of desire, because when we get what we want, we usually end up wanting something else because it's not really satisfying our inner desires. And I also give you tools like creating boundaries and grounding. And week 4 then is we look at how far we've come, and we start looking at defining our strengths from where we are now at, and we create a vision from these strengths for what we want for the future. And I also give you tools to help you keep on track. So I hope you can see my screen. I don't know if it's sharing or not. So I'm actually giving away, I have a bundle offer at the moment, an early bird bundle offer. So I just threw a lot of stuff in here so that I could give you as much as I could give you in order to get on this transformational journey and to get as much from it. So I'm including a 1-hour one-on-one coaching call with myself, a 7-part video series called The Subtle Art of Storytelling, which is worth €247. I'm giving you all this free as well with the course. My Master Your Confidence Masterclass, which is worth €99. And also this 4-week Master Your Confidence course, which I'm talking about, which is valued at €499. So the total of all those bonus bundle is €935. But if you want to grab the early bird discount, you can have it all for €399. So that's €399. And as I say, I'm just doing this in order to give people, a chance to get as much out of all of this as because we all have different. I'm going to cancel that screen share. We all have different limiting beliefs. We have different. I'm just struggling here with this as well at the moment. Sorry. We all have different things that we want to, our backstories, the different limiting beliefs, etc. So that's why I wanted to open up and give you all this as well. So that's the early bird discount bundle. And you can find all the information at my website, which is doloresandrew.com. And there you go. There is I am first time on SteamYard here. So that's the website is doloresandrew.com, and it's Master Your Confidence course. So Lynsey, thanks again. It was an absolute pleasure to have you on. Love chatting to you.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Because we both have, we all have different ways of chatting and sharing and all that. So
Absolutely. And for anybody who's thinking about doing Dolores's course, as a beta tester last year, it was a fantastic experience. I learned so much, and I'm just saying to you, if you can do it while you have a chance right now and it's on a special offer, just go for it. It will, make a huge difference to your mindset and to your confidence. So I'd highly recommend it. Having gone through the first iteration of it, I'm sure it's much improved, and you've added loads of bells and whistles. So I can only imagine how even much more, much better it is now that you've gotten the feedback on it.
Thanks very much, Lynsey, for that. And that was not scripted, so thank you, Lynsey. No, thank you. Where can people find you? How can we get in contact with you, Lynsey, if people are interested in?
So if anybody's interested in contacting me, it's LynseyHanratty.com, and I'm on Instagram, Lynsey_Hanratty, and also on Facebook. You'll find me on Facebook under Lynsey Hanratty as well. So you'll find me on most of the socials, and on LynseyHanratty.com as well. In the middle of a bit of a website revamp at the moment. So the old website's there for now, but the brand new website should be up at the beginning of October.
So I've shared it there across on the screen. I'm getting good at this.
Thank you so much for that. Appreciate it. And the best of luck with the course, Dolores. I'm sure it'll be a great success.
Thank you so much, Lynsey. Talk to you soon.
Take care.
Bye. Thanks everyone for listening.